I only asked about my mother's will, and my stepfather raised his hand. He didn't know someone else was listening to every word. In our Harbor Falls home, every wall has ears, intercom speakers, smart doorbells, and an open line to a law office. He thought this was a private conversation. It wasn't. Inheritance money always makes adults act like children, but that night, one phrase, signed after she died, exposed an entire fraud. I wasn't looking for trouble. I came to reclaim my name on the house, my mother's trust account, and my freedom. My name is Lena Hart, and I stood in the back row at my mother's funeral, watching Calvin Rourke play the grieving widower. The performance was Oscar-worthy, dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief he'd never used before, accepting condolences with practiced solemnity. 6 months of marriage to my mother, Elaine Hart Rourke, and he'd mastered the art of looking bereaved. The funeral home in Harbor Falls, Michigan, smelled of lilies and wood polish. February rain hammered against the stained glass windows while relatives whispered in corners. I caught fragments of their conversations. The lake house. Trust fund. Poor Elaine's wishes. Each phrase tightened the knot in my stomach. My mother had been meticulous about everything. As a former estate planning paralegal, she'd updated her will religiously, kept every receipt, documented every major purchase, yet Calvin claimed she'd left no clear instructions. Everything's in transition. He'd told me the day after she died. Legal stuff takes time. Aunt Patricia cornered me near the coffee station. Your mother told me about the education trust she set up for you to finish your MBA, she whispered, glancing at Calvin. She was so proud you were going back to school. What education trust? I asked. Patricia's face went pale. The one from your grandmother's estate. Elaine managed it for years. She said it would transfer to you directly when... She stopped, seeing Calvin approach. Ladies, Calvin interrupted, his contractor's hands resting on my shoulder with unnecessary weight. Thank you for coming. Elaine would have appreciated it. After he walked away, Patricia squeezed my hand. Check everything, Lena, everything. That evening, back at the house my mother had lived in for 20 years, now somehow referred to as Calvin's place, I pressed him for answers. We sat in the kitchen where Mom used to make her famous pot roast, the copper pots still hanging where she'd arranged them. The will reading is next month, Calvin said, not meeting my eyes. My lawyer is handling everything. Your lawyer? Mom used Henderson and Associates for decades. Well, situations change. My guy knows construction law, property transfers. It's more efficient. What about the life insurance, the bank accounts? He stood abruptly, chair scraping against the tile. Lena, your mother's death has been hard on all of us. Stop interrogating me like I'm one of your compliance violations at work. Calvin knew I worked as a compliance coordinator at Arcturus Compliance Group. He'd always dismissed it as paper pushing, never understanding that my job was essentially professional skepticism, finding discrepancies, tracking money trails, spotting when things didn't add up. And nothing about my mother's estate was adding up. I just need to know about the funeral expenses. I lied. For tax purposes. All handled from the joint account. What joint account? Mom kept her finances separate after Dad died. She was adamant about that. Calvin's jaw tightened. We were married. Married people combine assets. In 6 months, Mom would never... Your mother did a lot of things you didn't know about, he snapped. Now, I've had a long day. Your old room is made up if you're staying. My old room, in my mother's house, where family photos still lined the hallways, where her reading glasses still sat on the end table, where everything screamed her absence. That night, I called Henderson and Associates. The secretary recognized my name immediately. Oh, Lena, we were so sorry to hear about Elaine. She was wonderful. Thank you. I'm calling about her will. A pause. We haven't handled your mother's affairs since last July. She transferred everything to another firm. July, when she'd entered the ICU for the first time, when the cancer had spread to her liver, when she could barely hold a pen. Did she say why? Mr. Rourke handled the transfer. He had power of attorney. Power of attorney. The words echoed as I hung up. Mom had given me medical power of attorney, explicitly stating Calvin shouldn't make healthcare decisions. Why would she give him financial control? I stared at the ceiling of my childhood bedroom, surrounded by shadows and questions. Tomorrow, I'd start doing what I did best, following the paper trail, every document, every transfer, every signature. Calvin Rourke had no idea who he was dealing with. I wasn't just Elaine's grieving daughter. I was a compliance coordinator who'd caught million-dollar frauds and spreadsheet discrepancies. And something told me that my stepfather's performance as the grieving widower was just the beginning of his deception. The next morning, I drove to the county recorder's office before Calvin woke up. The clerk, a young woman with tired eyes, pulled up property records without question. What I found made my blood run cold. The lake house, Mom's pride and joy, purchased with Dad's life insurance 15 years ago, had been transferred to something called North Point Estates, LLC, exactly 1 week after Mom entered the ICU for the final time. The signature on the deed was shaky, barely resembling my mother's usual precise script. "Can I get copies of everything?" I asked. "Sure, hun. That'll be $30. Best $30 I ever spent." Back in my car, I studied the documents. The notary seal was dated February 3rd. Mom had died February 2nd at 11:47 p.m. I had the death certificate to prove it. My phone buzzed. Ruth Delaney, Mom's next-door neighbor. "Lena, dear, could you stop by? I have something you need to see." Ruth had been a secretary at the circuit court for 30 years before retiring. She knew every legal trick in the book and had warned Mom about marrying Calvin. "Too smooth," she'd said. "Men like that always have angles." Her living room smelled of lavender and coffee. She handed me a folder before I even sat down. "Your mother gave me this in December, said if anything happened, I should show it to you." Inside was a copy of Mom's original will from 2019, witnessed and notarized properly. I was the sole beneficiary of everything: the house, the lake property, her retirement accounts, the education trust Aunt Patricia had mentioned. "There's more," Ruth said, pulling out her iPad. "I've been doing some research on that LLC. North Point Estates was formed in January, right when your mother got worse. The registered agent? Calvin's son, Ty Rourke." Ty. The real estate agent who'd been sniffing around the lake house for years, telling Mom she was sitting on a gold mine. "Ruth, what's a codicil?" Her eyes narrowed. "An amendment to a will. Why?" Calvin mentioned something about Mom adding a codicil before she died. Said she wanted to take care of him properly. Ruth snorted. "Your mother despised codicils, said they were sloppy legal work. If she wanted to change anything, she'd redo the whole will properly." I spent the afternoon in Ruth's kitchen, mapping out the timeline on her legal pads. Mom enters hospital, LLC forms, property transfers, Mom dies, codicil appears. Everything pointed to systematic asset stripping while Mom lay dying. "You need a lawyer," Ruth said. "A real one, not some small-town hack Calvin might pay off." "Know anyone?" "Maya Ellison. She's in Grand Rapids. Handles estate fraud. Expensive but worth it." Ruth scribbled down a number. "Tell her I sent you." That evening, I called Maya from my car, parked outside a coffee shop with good Wi-Fi. She listened without interrupting as I laid out everything. "Email me those documents," she said. "Tonight. And Lena? Start recording everything. Michigan's a one-party consent state. Every conversation with Calvin, document it." "Is that legal?" "Completely. And if he's as dirty as he sounds, he'll slip up eventually." When I got back to the house, Calvin was in the den with a contractor's bid spread across the desk. "Planning renovations already?" I asked, phone recording in my pocket. "The place needs updating. Your mother let things slide. Mom just renovated the kitchen 2 years ago." He shrugged. "That was her taste. I'm thinking total gut job. Maybe convert her craft room into a man cave." Mom's craft room, where she'd spent countless hours quilting blankets for the cancer ward. I bit my tongue. "How much is this costing?" Insurance money should cover it. What insurance money? Calvin's face darkened. The life insurance, what else? I thought that would go to her beneficiaries. I am the beneficiary. Spouse automatically inherits. Not if there's a named beneficiary on the policy. He stood up, using his height to intimidate. You need to stop this. Lena, your mother left me in charge for a reason. She knew you were too emotional to handle this. Too emotional. Mom, who'd raised me to be analytical, logical, thorough, who'd taught me to read contracts at 12 and balance checkbooks at 15. I want to see the codicil, I said calmly. After probate starts, not before. That's not how it works. It's how it's working now. His tone was final. This is my house now. Lena, remember that. That night, Maya called back. The notary on that deed. Paula Knox? She's been investigated twice for document irregularities. Still practicing. Though, might be worth a conversation. The web was starting to show itself. Calvin, Ty, a questionable notary, and a trail of documents that didn't add up, all while my mother lay dying, unable to speak, unable to protest. I looked at Mom's photo on my nightstand, her warm smile, her determined eyes. Don't worry, Mom, I whispered. I learned from the best. He won't get away with this. Tomorrow, I'd visit Paula Knox, and I'd be recording every word. 3 days later, I confronted Calvin in the kitchen. It was past 10 p.m., and Ty had just left after another business meeting in the den. The house felt heavy with secrets. I spoke to Paula Knox today, I said, setting my phone on the counter. What Calvin didn't know was that I'd already opened a call to Maya's office, her paralegal listening on the other end. Calvin's shoulders tensed. You had no right. She said interesting things about that deed transfer, about how Ty brought the papers already signed, about how she had to fix the date. You're misunderstanding. Am I? Because the death certificate says Mom died at 11:47 p.m. on February 2nd. The notary stamp says February 3rd. Dead people can't sign documents. Calvin. His face flushed red. Your mother wanted me taken care of. We discussed it. When? While she was on morphine? While she couldn't speak? I stepped closer. I was there every day. Calvin, the nurses have records. She was non-responsive for the last 72 hours. You don't know everything that happened between us. I know you married her 6 months before she died. I know you transferred her property to an LLC owned by your son. I know you're claiming insurance money that wasn't yours. Stop. His voice was low, dangerous. I want to see the codicil tonight. You're not getting anything. That's theft, Calvin, fraud, elder abuse. The words hung in the air. The house's smart home system hummed quietly. The intercom we'd used earlier for the family meeting still glowing green. The security system's indicators showing active status. Mom had insisted on the upgrades last year, wanting to feel safe. You little bitch, Calvin snarled. Just like your mother, always thinking you're smarter than everyone else. We were smart enough to see through you. Your mother was dying and desperate. She needed someone, and I was there. To rob her? To take care of her. He slammed his hand on the counter. Do you know what it's like? Watching someone waste away? Changing their sheets? Dealing with their medications? That was the hospice nurse, not you. You were too busy filing LLC paperwork. Get out. His voice was quiet now, more frightening than yelling. Get out of my house. It's not your house. It's Mom's house, and you stole it. That's when he snapped. Calvin's hand shot out, shoving me hard. I stumbled backward, my hip slamming into the corner of the kitchen island. Pain shot through my side as I grabbed the counter to keep from falling. I said, get out. The smart doorbell's motion sensor triggered, its AI detecting sudden movement and elevated voices. Unknown to Calvin, it began recording and streaming to the cloud, and to Maya's office, where she'd been granted access as my attorney. I pressed my hand to my hip, feeling the warm spread of what would be a massive bruise. You just assaulted me. You fell, clumsy, just like Elaine in her last days. What did you just say about my mother? Calvin stepped closer, his contractor's bulk intimidating in the small space. Your mother fell a lot near the end. Confusion from the medications. Signed all sorts of things she didn't remember. My phone, still recording on the counter, captured every word. You made her sign those papers. Prove it. I will. He laughed, ugly and confident. With what? She's dead. The papers are legal. No one's going to believe the bitter daughter over the grieving widower. Maya Ellison might. His face went white. You hired Maya Ellison? Ruth Delaney sends her regards, by the way. Calvin's fist clenched. For a moment, I thought he'd hit me properly this time. Then we both heard it. Sirens in the distance, getting closer. What did you do? He growled. Nothing, but Maya might have called 911 when she heard you assault me over the phone. The phone, still connected, still recording. Calvin's eyes went to it, understanding dawning. You recorded this? Every word, including the part where you admitted to making my dying mother sign fraudulent documents. The sirens were in our driveway now. Red and blue lights flashed through the kitchen windows. You set me up. No, Calvin, you set yourself up. I just made sure someone was listening. The doorbell rang. Police. Calvin stood frozen, calculating his options. Then his businessman's smile returned, fake and cold. This isn't over. No, I agreed, opening the door for the officers. It's just beginning. Officer Martinez entered first, her partner behind her. We received a call about a domestic disturbance. This woman is trespassing. Calvin started. This woman is the victim. Maya's voice came through my phone speaker, clear and authoritative. Officers, I'm attorney Maya Ellison. I've been on the line for the past 20 minutes and heard Mr. Rourke assault my client. I have a recording of the entire incident. Calvin's face crumbled as he realized the trap he'd walked into. The intercom system he'd forgotten about, the smart home features he'd dismissed as mom's paranoia, the phone call he hadn't noticed. Every wall in this house really did have ears, and tonight, they'd all been listening. The police took statements and photos of my bruised hip, but Calvin wasn't arrested. Yet. Domestic situations. Officer Martinez explained apologetically. Without serious injury, it's usually just a report. But that report was exactly what Maya needed. The next morning, I met her at her Grand Rapids office, a sleek space overlooking the river. Maya Ellison was everything Calvin should fear. Brilliant, methodical, and furious about elder fraud. The recording is gold, she said, replaying Calvin's admission about making Mom sign things. But we need the paper trail to bury him. We spent 3 days building our case. Maya subpoenaed medical records that showed Mom had been on continuous morphine drips, barely conscious. When the supposed codicil was signed, the attending physician, Dr. Rodriguez, provided an affidavit stating Elaine Hart Rourke lacked capacity to execute legal documents after January 28th. The codicil is dated February 1st, Maya noted, 4 days after she lost capacity. But the real breakthrough came from Paula Knox, the notary. After Maya mentioned potential criminal charges, Paula cracked like an egg. Ty Rourke brought me the papers on February 3rd. She admitted in a recorded statement, said his father forgot to have them notarized before Mrs. Rourke passed, asked me to backdate them to February 1st, paid me $500 cash. You notarized a dead woman's signature? Maya asked. Ty said she'd signed before dying, just forgot the notary part. I know it was wrong, but it was fraud, Maya interrupted. Criminal fraud. Paula agreed to testify in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Meanwhile, I dug into North Point Estates, LLC. The paper trail was damning. The LLC's bank account showed deposits from Mom's investment accounts, transferred using the fraudulent power of attorney, then payments to Rourke Construction, Calvin's company, for estate management services. He was billing the estate for managing the estate he stole. I told Maya. Classic self-dealing. The probate judge will love this. Ruth had been busy too, She'd found 3 other widows in Harbor Falls who'd married late in life, only to have their new husbands end up with everything when they died. One name kept appearing in the property transfers: North Point Estates, LLC. "He's done this before," Ruth said over coffee. "Your mother wasn't the first." The investigation expanded. Maya brought in a forensic accountant who discovered Calvin had taken out a home equity line of credit on Mom's house after she died, using the fraudulent documents. "He borrowed against a dead woman's house." The accountant marveled. "That's bold, even for fraud." Then came the insurance policies. Calvin had claimed to be the beneficiary, but Mom's insurance agent, Tom Brennan, had different records. Elaine never changed her beneficiary. He told Maya, "Lena Hart is still listed, Mr. Rourke submitted a change form, but it was dated after Mrs. Rourke's death. We rejected it." "So where's the money?" "Still in holding, $500,000, waiting for the proper beneficiary to claim it." Calvin had been living on borrowed time and stolen money, thinking the insurance payout would cover his tracks. But insurance companies don't pay dead people's signatures either. Maya filed an emergency petition with the probate court to freeze all estate assets. Judge Hoffman, a sharp-eyed woman who'd seen every scam in the book, granted it immediately. "Mr. Rourke is hereby removed as personal representative pending investigation," she ruled. "All assets are frozen, including those transferred to North Point Estates, LLC. Calvin's lawyer, a nervous man named Peterson, tried to object. "Your Honor, my client was the surviving spouse. Your client appears to have committed extensive fraud." Judge Hoffman cut him off. "Would you like to see the notarized after-death documents?" The criminal investigation started the next week. Detective Sarah Walsh from the Economic Crimes Unit was thorough and disgusted. "We've been watching Calvin Rourke for years," she told me. "Could never get proof. Your recordings changed everything." She showed me files on 2 previous wives who died within a year of marriage. Both left everything to Calvin. Both had questionable documents appear after their deaths. "Mom was going to be number 3, I said, feeling sick. "Not anymore. We're charging him with fraud, forgery, elder abuse, and theft. Ty, too. He was in on the whole thing." The arrest happened on a Thursday. I watched from Ruth's window as they led Calvin out in handcuffs. Reporters already gathering. Ty was picked up at his real estate office, clients watching in shock. But we weren't done. Maya had discovered something else in the financial records. Bills from Rourke Construction to the estate for renovations that never happened. Invoices for work on the lake house while Mom was dying, paid from her accounts. "He was robbing her while she was taking her last breaths," Maya said quietly. We added wire fraud to the charges. Each transaction was a separate count. Calvin was looking at decades in prison. That night, I stood in Mom's kitchen, the house finally quiet and mine again. Her coffee mug still sat by the sink. Her handwriting still marked the calendar. Doctor's appointments she'd never make. A lunch date with Ruth she'd never keep. But we'd protected what she'd built, what she'd wanted to leave behind. The education trust was safe. The house was safe. The lake property would be recovered. "We got him, Mom," I whispered to the empty room. "We got him." 2 weeks after Calvin's arrest, his lawyer called Maya with a proposal. "My client wants to settle. Make this all go away quietly." Maya put him on speaker so I could hear. "Your client is facing criminal charges. This isn't going away. The family assets, he's willing to negotiate a settlement on the civil side." "There's nothing to negotiate," Maya replied. "Everything he took was stolen." "He has information," Peterson said carefully, "about other situations, previous marriages. The prosecutor might be interested." Calvin wanted to trade information about his past victims for a lighter sentence. The thought made me sick. But Maya was strategic. "We'll meet," she said, "but not to negotiate, to discuss restitution." She set up a family mediation at the community clubhouse, a public space with security cameras and recording equipment for HOA meetings. What Calvin didn't know was that Maya had arranged for some special guests. The morning of the meeting, I helped Maya set up the conference room. Ruth arrived early with her laptop and a box of documentation she'd been gathering. Then came someone unexpected. Retired Judge Meredith Sloan, Ruth's friend from the courthouse. "I'm here as a neutral observer," Judge Sloan said with a wink. "Ruth mentioned this might be interesting." Maya connected her laptop to the projection system, just in case we need to review documents. At exactly 2 p.m., Calvin arrived with Peterson and Ty. Calvin had lost weight in jail before making bail. His contractor's swagger replaced with hollow eyes. Ty looked worse. His real estate license suspended. His reputation destroyed. "Let's make this quick," Calvin said, sitting down heavily. "What do you want?" "Everything," I said simply. "Every penny you stole." "I didn't steal anything. Elaine wanted—" "Stop." Maya pulled out a folder. "We have Paula Knox's testimony. We have the medical records. We have the financial transfers. Would you like me to play the recording where you admitted to making my client's mother sign documents?" Calvin's jaw tightened. That was taken out of context. "Then let's provide context," Maya said, nodding to me. I pulled out my phone. "Mr. Rourke, you said that night that Mom fell a lot near the end, that she signed things she didn't remember. Would you like to clarify that?" "I don't recall saying that." "Should I play the recording?" Peterson whispered urgently to Calvin, but his client waved him off. "Fine. What's your offer?" "No offer," Maya said. "Full restitution. Return everything to the estate, the house, the lake property, all the money you transferred, plus damages." "That's ridiculous." "That's the law." Calvin leaned forward. "You want to destroy me? Fine, but I know things about the others before Elaine. We know about Margaret Thompson and Dorothy Williams," I said, watching his face pale. "Detective Walsh has been very thorough." For the first time, Calvin looked scared, really scared. "How about—" Ty interjected. "We return the lake house and call it even." Ruth laughed. "Boy, you committed fraud for $500 from a notary. You're not in a position to negotiate." "This is extortion," Peterson protested. "This is consequences," Judge Sloan said quietly. Everyone turned to her. "Mr. O'Rourke, I've been reviewing this case. If you were in my courtroom, I'd have already ruled against you. Take the deal." "What deal?" Calvin asked. Maya smiled. "Full restitution, and we don't push for the maximum criminal penalties. You'll still serve time, but maybe years instead of decades." "And if I refuse?" "Then we go to trial, civil and criminal. We play the recordings. We bring in your previous wives' families. We expose everything." I stood up. "You took advantage of my mother when she was dying. You thought grief would make me weak, too distracted to notice, but you forgot something. Calvin." "What's that?" "Mom raised me. She taught me to read contracts, to question documents, to always keep records. She knew what you were, even at the end. That's why she gave Ruth that folder. That's why she set up the smart home systems. She was protecting me, even while dying." The room was silent. Calvin stared at the table, defeated. "There's one more thing," Maya added. She clicked her laptop, and a document appeared on screen. "This is a quitclaim deed for all properties, already prepared. Sign it now, in front of witnesses, and we'll recommend minimum sentences." "This is coercion," Peterson said weakly. "This is justice," Judge Sloan corrected. "And frankly, Mr. Rourke, it's more mercy than you showed Elaine." Calvin's hand shook as he reached for the pen, but he stopped, looking at me one last time. "Your mother did love you. You know, she talked about you constantly, how proud she was." "I know," I said quietly. "That's why she made sure you couldn't steal my future, even if you stole hers." He signed the papers, every page, every property, every account. Ty signed next, his real estate dreams crumbling with each signature. As they prepared to leave, Detective Walsh entered the room. Mr. Rourke Jr., I need you to come with me. The prosecutor has some questions about Margaret Thompson's death. Calvin stood slowly, his age suddenly showing. It never ends, does it? Not until justice is served, Walsh replied, leading them out. The room emptied except for Maya, Ruth, Judge Sloan, and me. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Ruth raised her coffee mug. To Elaine, she said. She got him in the end. To Mom. I agreed, feeling her presence in the victory. The probate hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. Maya had filed for an emergency session, and Judge Hoffman agreed given the evidence of fraud. The courtroom was fuller than expected. Word had spread through Harbor Falls about Calvin's arrest and his previous wives. Calvin sat at the defendant's table, his orange jumpsuit replacing his contractor's confidence. He'd been denied bail after Margaret Thompson's case was reopened. Ty sat behind him in the gallery, out on bail but facing his own charges. Your Honor, Maya began, we're here to address the fraudulent administration of Elaine Hart Rourke's estate and request immediate remedial action. I've reviewed the files, Judge Hoffman said. Mr. Peterson, does your client contest the evidence? Peterson stood nervously. Your Honor, my client maintains. I'll take that as a yes. Miss Ellison, present your evidence. Maya was surgical. She started with the timeline. Mom's diagnosis, the marriage, the declining capacity, the death certificate. Each point appeared on the courtroom's display screen. Now, Maya said, clicking to the next slide. Let's discuss the codicil. The document appeared on screen. Even from my seat, I could see Mom's signature looked wrong, shaky, uncertain. This codicil was allegedly signed February 1st. Maya continued. But Doctor, Rodriguez's affidavit confirms Mrs. Rourke was non-responsive from January 28th onward. She played a video deposition from Mom's ICU nurse. Elaine couldn't hold a pen those last days. She couldn't even squeeze my hand. Then came Paula Knox's recorded confession. The courtroom was silent as the notary admitted to backdating the documents, to being paid by Ty, to notarizing a signature she never witnessed. Objection. Peterson tried. This witness was coerced. By whom? Judge Hoffman asked sharply. She came forward voluntarily after learning she'd participated in fraud. Maya moved to the financial evidence. Each slide showed another theft. The house transfer to the LLC, the construction bills that never happened, the credit line taken against Mom's house after her death. In total, Maya summarized, Mr. Rourke stole approximately $1.2 million in assets and cash from the estate. Gasps rippled through the gallery. I saw Margaret Thompson's daughter in the back row, tears streaming down her face. But there's more, Maya said. She clicked again, and Calvin's voice filled the courtroom. It was the recording from that night in the kitchen, crystal clear, every word audible. Your mother fell a lot near the end. Confusion from the medications. Signed all sorts of things she didn't remember. Then, I had to fix things. The dates. Paula understood. Just a technicality. Your mother was going to sign anyway. I just helped the process. Calvin's face had gone gray. That part hadn't been in the original recording we'd shared. Maya had enhanced the audio, pulling out a conversation Calvin had with Ty in the background, thinking the phone couldn't pick it up. Your Honor, Peterson said desperately, these recordings were made without my client's knowledge. Michigan is a one-party consent state. Judge Hoffman cut him off. The recordings are admissible. Continue, Miss Ellison. Maya played the final piece, a phone call between Calvin and Ty from jail, where Calvin tried to coordinate hiding assets. They didn't know jail calls were recorded. Dad, what about the Thompson money? Ty's voice asked. That's in the Cayman account. They'll never find it. And Dorothy's jewelry? Safety deposit box under the business name. The courtroom erupted. Margaret Thompson's daughter stood up. That's my mother's wedding ring he's talking about. Judge Hoffman gavelled for order. Mr. O'Rourke, would you like to address these allegations? Calvin stood slowly. For a moment, I thought he might confess everything. Then his conman's instincts kicked in. Your Honor, I loved Elaine. Everything I did was— Stop. Judge Hoffman's voice was ice. I've heard enough. She began reading her ruling, each word a nail in Calvin's coffin. The codicil is declared null and void. Having been executed after death, the power of attorney is revoked as fraudulently obtained. All transfers to North Point Estates, LLC, are reversed. Calvin Rourke is permanently removed as personal representative and prohibited from any involvement with the estate. She paused, looking directly at Calvin. Furthermore, this court finds evidence of systematic estate fraud spanning multiple victims. I'm referring all evidence to the Attorney General's Office for RICO investigation. RICO, racketeering charges. Calvin and Ty had operated a criminal enterprise targeting dying women. The estate of Elaine Hart Rourke is restored to its rightful beneficiary, Lena Hart. All assets wrongfully taken must be returned within 48 hours. Your Honor, Peterson protested, my client is incarcerated. Then he better make arrangements quickly. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with finality. As people filed out, Calvin was led past me by the bailiffs. He stopped, the chains on his ankles clinking. Your mother knew, he said quietly. At the end, she knew what I was. She said you'd figure it out. Said you were smarter than all of us. She was right. I know, he said, and for the first time, I saw genuine regret in his eyes. That's why I tried to get rid of you so fast. The bailiffs pulled him away. Ty followed, avoiding my eyes. In the hallway, Margaret Thompson's daughter approached me. Thank you, she said simply. You did what I couldn't. We all did it together, I said, gesturing to Maya and Ruth. And our mothers, they made sure we'd have what we needed to fight back. That night, I stood in Mom's house, my house now, legally and completely. Her pictures still lined the walls. Her coffee mug still sat by the sink, but now, her justice was complete. The doorbell rang. It was the prosecutor, Detective Walsh, and an FBI agent. Miss Hart, the agent said, we need your help. We found evidence of 6 more victims across 3 states. I looked at Mom's photo on the mantel, her determined eyes seeming to nod. Come in, I said. Let's finish what we started. The criminal trial was set for 3 months later, but the probate emergency hearing happened within a week. Judge Hoffman had fast-tracked it given the evidence of ongoing fraud. This time, the courtroom was packed. Word had spread through Harbor Falls and beyond. Families of Calvin's previous victims, reporters, and curious locals filled every seat. Calvin appeared via video link from county jail, his lawyer Peterson looking increasingly uncomfortable beside an empty defendant's chair. This is an emergency hearing to finalize the probate decisions and address new evidence. Judge Hoffman announced, Miss Ellison, you may proceed. Maya stood, commanding the room. Your Honor, since our last hearing, forensic accountants have uncovered additional malfeasance. Mr. Rourke didn't just steal from the estate. He created fictitious debts to drain it further. She presented invoice after invoice from Rourke Construction to the estate. Roof repairs that never happened. Foundation work on a house with a perfect foundation. Plumbing updates billed 3 times for the same non-existent work. Total fictitious billings, $847,000, Maya stated. Judge Hoffman's eyes narrowed. Mr. Peterson, can your client explain these charges to his own company? On the video screen, Calvin started to speak, but Peterson muted him. Your Honor, we dispute these allegations. With what evidence? Judge Hoffman asked. Peterson shuffled papers helplessly. We need more time. You've had 3 months. Miss Ellison, continue. Maya pulled up the next slide. We've also discovered Mr. Rourke took out 3 credit cards in Mrs. Rourke's name after her death, accumulating $67,000 in charges. The list appeared on screen. Luxury items, vacations, even an engagement ring dated 2 weeks after Mom's funeral. He was already shopping for his next victim, Maya said coldly. From the gallery? A woman gasped. Later, I learned she'd been dating Calvin before his arrest. Furthermore, Maya continued, we've located the Cayman account mentioned in the jail recordings. It contains $2.3 million stolen from Margaret Thompson, Dorothy Williams, and Linda Reeves. Linda Reeves, a new name, another victim we hadn't known about. The FBI has frozen these accounts pending criminal proceedings, Maya added, but we request this court order full restitution to all victims' estates. Judge Hoffman nodded. Mr. Rourke, I'm going to address you directly. Is there anything you'd like to say? On screen. Calvin unmuted himself. His voice was smaller now, defeated. I want to make a deal. This isn't a criminal proceeding. Mr. Rourke, no deals here. I have information about Ty's involvement, about the notary ring, about... Mr. Rourke, Judge Hoffman interrupted. Are you confessing to additional crimes? Peterson frantically muted his client again, but it was too late. The prosecutor, who'd been sitting quietly in the gallery, stood up. Your Honor, we'd like that statement on record. Noted, Judge Hoffman said dryly. Let's proceed with the matter at hand. She began reading her comprehensive ruling. The court finds Calvin Rourke engaged in systematic, premeditated fraud against the estate of Elaine Hart Rourke and others. All previous rulings stand and are expanded as follows. First, all fictitious debts to Rourke Construction are void. The company's assets are frozen pending criminal investigation. Second, the $2.3 million in hidden accounts will be distributed among verified victims' estates, with forensic accounting to determine proper allocation. Third, Mr. Rourke is personally liable for all credit fraud, legal fees, and investigative costs incurred by the estate. Fourth, a constructive trust is established over any assets Mr. Rourke acquired during his marriage to Mrs. Rourke, as they were obtained through fraud. She paused, looking at the video screen where Calvin sat slumped. Mr. Rourke, you targeted vulnerable women at their weakest moments. You stole not just their money but their final dignity. This court has rarely seen such calculated cruelty. Then she turned to me. Miss Hart, your mother's estate is fully restored. Additionally, you're awarded damages equal to the attempted theft, payable from Mr. Rourke's personal assets and any recovered funds. The gavel came down. It was over, at least the probate portion. As people filed out, discussing the ruling in shocked whispers, the prosecutor approached me. Miss Hart, the criminal trial will be harder. Calvin's hired a new lawyer, someone expensive. They'll attack your credibility, claim you coached witnesses, say the recordings were edited. Let them try. I said, we have the truth. And we have more, Maya added. 3 more victims have come forward since the news broke. Calvin's going to die in prison. That evening, I met with the other victims' families at Ruth's house, Margaret Thompson's daughter, Dorothy Williams' son, Linda Reeves' sister, all of us bound by Calvin's cruelty. He told my mother he loved her while she was dying. Dorothy's son said quietly, she believed him. They all did. I replied, that was his weapon, using love against the vulnerable. We formed a support group, meeting weekly to share evidence and comfort. Each family had pieces of the puzzle. Together, we built an unbreakable case. The criminal trial was set for next month. Calvin faced 47 counts of fraud, forgery, elder abuse, and theft. Ty faced 23 counts. Paula Knox had pled guilty and agreed to testify. But tonight, in Mom's kitchen, I finally felt peace. The house was mine, legally and completely. The education trust was restored. The lake house was back in the family. I made Mom's pot roast recipe, the smell filling the kitchen like her presence. Ruth joined me for dinner, bringing her famous apple pie. Elaine would be proud, Ruth said, raising her wine glass. She knew. I replied. Somehow, she knew I'd need those recordings, those smart home systems, that paper trail. She protected me even while dying. That's what mothers do, Ruth said softly. Tomorrow, I'd return to work at Arcturus, my reputation enhanced rather than damaged. My colleagues now called me the fraud killer, and my boss had already promoted me to senior compliance director. But tonight, I was just Lena Hart, daughter of Elaine Hart Rourke, sitting in my mother's house, finally at peace. The doorbell chimed, the same smart doorbell that had recorded Calvin's assault. I smiled at the irony as I checked the video feed. It was Maya, holding a bottle of champagne and a final document. The Cayman accounts were released, she said, grinning. Every penny recovered. Calvin Rourke is officially broke. We opened the champagne in Mom's honor, toasting justice served. The man who'd thought he could steal from the dying had lost everything. And Mom, in her infinite wisdom and love, had made sure of it. The final judgment came down on a gray September morning, exactly 1 year after Mom's death. Calvin received 35 years without parole. Ty got 12 years. The judge called it the most egregious case of estate fraud she'd seen in 30 years on the bench. But the real ending came that afternoon, at Mom's house, my house now. I stood in the doorway with a locksmith, watching him change every lock. The old keys, Calvin's keys, would never work again. As the locksmith worked, I noticed something behind the porch light, a small envelope, weatherproofed, with my name in Mom's handwriting. Inside was a note, dated a week before she died. My dearest Lena, if you're reading this, then you found out about Calvin. I knew what he was, sweetheart. The smart home system, the recordings, the documents with Ruth, all intentional. I couldn't stop him while I was sick, but I could make sure you'd have the weapons to fight. The house is yours, the lake cabin is yours, but more importantly, your strength is yours. You got that from me, and I got it from my mother. Calvin thought he was stealing from a dying woman. He was wrong. He was stealing from a mother protecting her daughter, and mothers always win in the end. All my love. Mom P.S. Check the attic, behind the Christmas decorations. One more surprise. My hands shook as I climbed to the attic. Behind boxes of ornaments was a small fireproof safe I'd never seen. The combination was my birthday. Inside were original documents, not copies, but originals, Mom's real will, dated and notarized properly, with video testimony on a USB drive, bank statements showing Calvin's suspicious transfers starting just weeks after their marriage, a private investigator's report on Calvin's previous wives, and a check made out to Maya Ellison for her exact legal fees, dated the month before Mom died, on the memo line, for protecting Lena. Mom had planned everything, every detail, every protection. I called Maya immediately. She hired you before she died? Attorney-client privilege survived her death, Maya said softly. But now that you've found her note, yes, Elaine hired me to be ready when you needed me. She knew you'd figure it out, but she wanted to make sure you had backup. That evening, the families of Calvin's victims gathered at the lake house for a memorial. We decided to turn it into a retreat for families dealing with elder fraud. Mom would have loved that. Margaret Thompson's daughter brought photos of her mother. Dorothy Williams' son shared stories. Linda Reeves's sister played guitar. We laughed, we cried, we healed. Ruth stood up to speak. Elaine Hart Rourke was my friend for 20 years. She was brilliant, kind, and tougher than anyone knew, but her greatest accomplishment wasn't the career she built or the money she saved. It was raising Lena. She knew her daughter would need strength, so she gave her puzzles to solve as a child, taught her to read contracts at 12, to question everything. She built a warrior disguised as a compliance officer. Everyone laughed, but it was true. Mom had been preparing me for this fight my whole life. As the sun set over the lake, I walked to the end of the dock where Mom used to sit. The water was calm, reflecting the orange sky like fire. "We did it, Mom," I whispered. "We got him." The wind picked up, rustling through the trees, almost like an answer. Calvin would spend his remaining years in prison. The other families recovered their money. The house was restored to exactly how Mom had decorated it. Her education trust would help me finally get that MBA she'd dreamed of me having. But the real victory was simpler. Calvin had thought grief would make me weak, vulnerable, easy to dismiss. He'd thought a daughter's love would blind me to his crimes. He'd never understood that a daughter's love was exactly what made me fight. Every document I'd examined, every recording I'd made, every legal battle I'd faced, all of it was love in action, love with teeth, love that demanded justice. As I walked back to the house, I saw them all through the windows. The other families. Ruth, Maya, even Detective Walsh had come. They were laughing, sharing food, creating something beautiful from something terrible. Calvin had tried to steal from the dying, but the dying had been smarter, stronger, more prepared than he'd ever imagined. Mom hadn't just protected her assets, she'd protected her daughter, set a trap for a predator, and ensured justice from beyond the grave. The porch light came on, the same smart system that had recorded everything. I smiled and touched the door frame where Mom had carved my height marks as a child. "Welcome home," I said to myself, using the new keys to open the door to my house, my inheritance, my mother's final gift. Inside, warmth and laughter waited. Outside, Calvin sat in a cell. His empire of theft crumbled to nothing. Mom had won. Love had won. Justice had won. And that's where the story ends. Not with revenge served cold, but with justice served complete. A daughter's love honored, and a mother's protection extending beyond death itself. Calvin had raised his hand to me once, but Mom had raised me to be stronger than any man who thought he could steal from the vulnerable. And in the end, that made all the difference. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please comment below and let's connect. If this story touched you or reminded you to protect your loved ones, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Your stories and experiences matter too. And together we can help others recognize these warning signs. Until next time, stay strong and protect what matters most.